If you tell people like, yeah, I went backpacking, and they will say like, oh, in Southeast Asia, and it's like, no, to West Africa, and they're like,
Where is that?
like, what did you do there? Like, and sometimes I ask like, what do you think is there? And they're like, just a lot of sand. Like, people can ask such stupid questions, like, did they have enough water? Like, do they have water?
There's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of racism, a lot of fascism, Zionism, etc. When people are educated, people are able to form opinions, and then they will rebel for their rights, for the rights of other people. So it's easier to just keep people uneducated and misinformed.
The history books are written from the perspective, the Western European perspective, and they're not being updated and changed enough. So of course that's a big part of the problem. Like the golden age in the Netherlands, which was the age of slavery, it's still called the golden age.
This is Femi Shuel for Africa Web TV. We are starting a very special edition of the Africa Narrative Podcast. These two ladies are not Africans. I'm sure if you put on your glasses, you will have noticed that. But they are two ladies who have traveled extensively in Africa, and they have an opinion or opinions about Africa that is not really mainstream. It's not the general opinion. So today we are inviting them. You probably know Sara from the other podcast we did earlier with her. And now she's going to talk today with a companion, Myrthe. Myrthe is from the Netherlands. Sara is originally from Italy. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, this will be the best time for you to hit the subscribe button. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell so that whenever new videos are uploaded, you will be the first to be informed. So without much ado, I'm going to just disappear out of the picture and let these two ladies have a conversation about Africa.
So last year I was here at Sphinx, and we were talking about my experience in traveling in West Africa. And I actually talked about Myrthe and how we met. Very randomly, I remember we met, I think, in a taxi going from Attar to Shingeti, Mauritania.
In the middle of the desert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know actually how did you end up in Mauritania and why did you decide to travel in Mauritania and West Africa afterwards?
I was actually traveling in Senegal, and I was staying in Saint Louis. And then I thought, okay, now that I'm so close to the border with Mauritania, maybe I can just go like 2 days, because they don't speak English and they don't speak French there. And I was even learning French. So I thought, okay, let's just go for 2 days to the capital. Then I met some people who told me like, no, you should go to the desert. This capital is boring. Like, you have to see the real Mauritania. So I went just very randomly. I had no clue what I was doing. And then I got into this shared taxi, and I looked next to me is the first white person I see in half a year. I'm like, yeah, so that was really funny. But that's, yeah, so Mauritania was those 2 weeks of traveling. But then I went back to, that's actually the only time I was there. Then I went back to Senegal and Gambia. But of course we saw each other there again.
And then we met each other again in Senegal and in the Gambia, and we ended up meeting like so many people. And actually we always had, from the first moments, really interesting talks. Because usually like the tourists I met over there were mostly tourists going to hotels and like staying in quite a certain kind of tourism, while we were traveling a bit differently with locals and stuff. And we had like a lot of interesting talks about politics as well. In that period also, there were something going on in Senegal with Sonko. And I remember you wrote like an article about what was going on in that moment.
So this was in the end of 2023, like after, I think, October 2023, that time. Yeah, basically coming to Senegal, Gambia, anywhere you went, you would hear Sonko, Sonko. So of course, yeah, I asked people like, who is this? Who is this man that I never heard about? And yeah, so they told me it's the opposition leader. He's imprisoned. He's gonna bring, he's the future of West Africa. He's gonna change everything. He opened our eyes towards France and neo-colonial ways, and just he was such a big idol that I thought, okay, I'm gonna write an article about it to hopefully make people more aware in in the Netherlands as well. It was really nice that from the beginning onwards we always had nice conversations, and in Gambia as well with Waka and his friends. Shout out to Waka if you see this.
Also, I mean, I know you've been to Senegal a lot in the past months. Even you went back many times. And I'm following the news, of course, but I would like to know more about how life has changed there, like from what you've heard from people in the last months since the elections, and what has changed there, because I don't think we actually talked about this, and I'm quite curious to hear about that.
Yeah, so just for the context, of course, in the end, Sonko put forward Diomaye. He won the elections. Of course, Sonko is now free, and they are leading the country together. So I asked a lot of people what changed, and the reactions were actually really mixed. Because, for instance, a taxi driver would tell me like, so much better, less corruption, I don't have to stop every time to give my papers and pay. And they dropped the bread prices, the rice prices, these kind of things. But other friends of me that I would talk to, especially young people, would say like, no, nothing changed. We're disappointed. There are still no jobs. Like that. And of course, those things take time. And especially if you do it in the democratic way. A lot of friends of me compared Sonko and Diomaye to Ibrahim Traore. And they said like, over there, they opened a peanut factory, a tomato factory. They created so many jobs already. And here, nothing is happening. Nothing is changing. Yeah, I guess that's the difference between democratic change. It takes a lot of time and a lot of laws to pass, and
Senegal is still more linked to France, like comparing to, the AES, like Burkina, Mali, and Niger, which are really cutting the ties very strongly, both with France and with the US. But I also heard that, in Senegal, they're also saying goodbye to the French troops. So they're actually exiting Senegal as well. And I also heard that they're planning to join the AES into changing the currency from the CFA to another currency. I don't know when that's going to happen, not even in Burkina. But yeah, for sure what Ibrahim Traore is doing is something very different. And that's why all Burkina is with him, and actually all of the world is standing with him. A lot of people don't know anything about African culture, and because they haven't seen anything from first-hand experience,
I think that's really funny if you tell people like, yeah, I went backpacking, and they will say like, oh, in Southeast Asia, and it's like, no, through West Africa, and they're like,
where is that?
Like, what did you do there? And sometimes I ask like, what do you think is there? And they're like, just a lot of sand. Like, people can ask such stupid questions, like, did they have enough water? Like, do they have water? The most ridiculous questions are there houses from stone? So I think there, like you said, there is still a lot of ignorance, but also like misinformation, propaganda, people not realizing that Africa, they think it's underdeveloped. If you show a picture of Lagos, they will think it's Dubai, they will never think this is in Africa. Yeah, I think that's a really big part of the problem,
Our governments right now don't help with, educating people properly. There's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of racism, a lot of fascism, Zionism, etc. But I want to stay positive. And from what I've seen, from this like little circle of people that I know, the circle is getting bigger. And the more people get informed and the more people get curious and more open to learn more. So I think it's just a matter of keeping on talking and keeping on, trying to stay informed from firsthand, news, and talk to more people. And the people that maybe are a bit curious, they're going to spread the seeds, So in general, I don't think Europeans are ready, but there are some people that are starting to be more open. And that gives a bit hope, like compared to years ago, I see now that there is kind of a switch in general in the entire world and perception of things.
Are Europeans ready? Well, it's a big question, of course. Like, I don't know, but one big part of the problem is that people still think that it's dangerous to travel to Africa or have backward views on the development or these kind of things. So I think that are Europeans ready? Well, it has to start with the media representing Africa well, correctly, with the right information. I think people would have a very different opinion, but a lot of people are, not critical in their thinking and just, I have had a lot of conversations with people who are like, oh, really? I had no clue. And of course, then their perception changes. But if you don't know, how will your perception change? So are they ready? Yeah.
I think in general, like, okay, I can talk about Europe generally, even though, I grew up in Italy, so that's what I know most from. But I think education in general is not good. And all the governments are cutting like more and more money from education to keep us uneducated and misinformed through the media controlled by the governments, just to keep easy control on us, And that's also why, I don't know, a lot of, like in Europe, we have like democracies mostly, but they're not working very well. And also, it's a very tricky topic, but I think it's just, to keep control in their hands. Like usually when people are educated, people are able to form opinions and then they will rebel for their rights, for the rights of other people. So it's easier to just keep people uneducated and misinformed. So the only way is to actually do some research and find yourself like sources that you can trust and maybe follow non-mainstream media, follow Africa Web TV.
I do know that, of course, the history books are written from the perspective, the Western European perspective, and they're not being updated and changed enough, so of course that's a big part of the problem. Like the golden age in the Netherlands, which was the age of slavery, it's still called the golden age. After the Black Lives Matter movements, like statues were taken down, these kind of things, but there are still a lot of street names with names of people that did horrible things. Is it in the best interest of the West to keep people ignorant on Africa? Well, that's probably why the books are not updated. Of course, history books are always written. I can imagine, for instance, I have a friend from China who said that their history books in China are very different from the history books that we have. So of course, every country will write from their perspective. But there are a lot of incorrect things that we are learning, and that's how our perceptions are shaped. So why in Africa they're still using European books? Well, I think that would be a very, very good change, and that's also something that Sonko was saying in his plans that people liked so much. Like, why are we still teaching in French when people are speaking Wolof or Jola or whatever language at home, then going to school and having to learn things in a language that they don't speak. And their test results can be not that good because they just didn't understand what was taught in class, not because of it being too difficult, but only because it's taught in a language that is not yours. So I think, yeah, it would be a really good change if they start teaching in the native language. And I think maybe that's also, again, like why Ibrahim Traore is so popular, because people are thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. We should change that. But of course, changing an educational system is insanely hard. So why it's not happening yet? Well, I guess because it's just super hard to change.
You know, like before colonialism, history used to be said like in an oral way, you know? Like, for example, in West Africa, the griot, they were like the keepers of history and tradition. So actually, a lot of African history was orally brought to the next generations. And actually, the books with the like history wrote from the European perspective were, of course, brought by Europeans. So it is not even a system that was like indigenous to the population, you know. So it's a system that was brought by colonialism, and it's still in place because like countries are still colonized. Technically, countries gained independence, but they're still colonized in so many little ways, like the currencies, the educational system. So I think it's a way of decolonizing little by little everything that it's been brought deep for centuries in the culture, to annihilate the cultures that were there before, and little by little detaching.
Of course, I knew like the West is not the, you know, like the good guy it always says it is. For instance, going back home and telling people like, yeah, there are so many neo-colonial ways. Like, for instance, did you know that there are still 14 countries using the old French franc? And they all said, what? I was like, yeah, and it can only be pressed in France. So imagine how dependent. And they're like, huh? No. And yeah, and they have no clue, and I didn't either. So like you said, like there are so many things that on both sides, like a lot of Europeans are not aware of the level of neocolonialism still happening. Yeah, and a lot of neocolonial things are so ingrained in the system now that it's hard to change. And educational reform is, of course, very, very hard.
It will happen, but it's gonna take time and a lot of, I think, courage from leaders to detach themselves from certain countries. And
I also think it's interesting that a lot of people and a lot of Africans that I meet are talking about the revolution that is happening. You know, people opening their eyes, realizing we need change, we want change, demanding change. Young leaders stepping up, opening opportunities. I think a lot of Europeans, actually none of my European friends really know about that.
How did you feel like traveling in West Africa as a single white woman towards other women? And what do you think of like the women that you've seen around in Africa?
When I arrived in Dakar, I had booked only like 2 nights in an Airbnb, and that was my whole plan. So I was a bit nervous because I had no clue what to expect. And already on the first night, my Airbnb host invited me for dinner, and his cousin, she invited me to go somewhere with her. And the next day she invited me to travel to the Casamance region with her, 10 hours in a car, to go to a village party there. I thought that was so like open and generous, and of course I knew nothing about the hospitality on that level, but she invited me with her family. I became really good friends with her little sister, my age, Georgette, and we lived together as sisters, Georgette and me, you know. So my experience there was really positive, making like a really close friendship. I think when traveling, like backpacking, generally you will be more approached by men. But I think if you are as a tourist traveling like that, you will meet less women who approach you like that. And yeah, because of that, also less friendships. I was just lucky to have, to get into a family and by that making friendships. And yeah, also I also did an internship there. I also had a lot of female colleagues that became close friends. But that is a way in, and then you can become very close friends with people. But just traveling or on the street, or I think, yeah, you will speak less to women than to men.
I traveled like sometimes in very like random villages and stuff, and what I noticed, unfortunately, most of the time is that talking to women was more difficult because many times the language would be a barrier because they would be less educated than men and then not able to speak French, for example. So that's also something that really, that really struck in my... I found it really a shame that I wasn't able to speak more to women. And of course, yeah, as a solo woman, you are approached more by men.
Because I was always with my friends. She had the opportunity to go to university, high school, so her French was really good. But my French was actually really bad. We were talking on Google Translate. But over time, of course, yeah, it became better. And so I think, yeah, in that case, but even though I was also in really random villages in the middle of nowhere, I had my friends, so I was always with her. And because of that, I think if you are with a woman, you will talk more with women and they can translate and like that, yeah. But maybe that was then just my luck. Because without, I would have been completely lost as well. Yeah.
I hope you've been enjoying the conversation between these two ladies who know more about Africa than maybe 99% of people walking across Europe. I have a question for both of you. What can Africa or Africans do for themselves to really show their pride so that nobody's going to be telling Africa who Africa is, so that Africans can tell their stories, and not only about stories, but, being happy with who they are?
The first thing I thought about was keep rocking the African clothing, Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of influence from the US and Europe in clothing style. But yeah, I just love to see that even if people are wearing, I don't know, Lakers jersey, often it's combined still with African jewelry. I think that's really important. So keep rocking that.
In general, I would say just be proud of everything you have. Your cultures, your clothing, your colors, the music, everything that is connected to what you know already is not worse than what is coming from Europe. Actually, maybe it's even better. Just be proud of everything that is African because you have so much.
Even if maybe sometimes, the opportunities are not there that you want to take. I think in Africa, there is the nature, the culture, the community. I think in Europe we forgot a lot of values and unity and feeling of community, and that's why a lot of people are disconnected, just running through their agenda, lost in the system, unhappy, depressed, stressed. Why I liked to travel and spend time with people in West Africa then so much is because they were still living more in communities, more in touch with nature, more in touch with themselves, more in touch with their spirituality. I think that is something to be very proud of.
I want to add to that by also telling Africans that you rock. The only thing is you don't believe it. You don't even know it. So before even actually trying to believe it. Because I'll just give one example. That child walking 5 kilometers on foot to school in a village wherever in Africa, when the people from Europe, when they come there, they make pictures. That's a sign of poverty, of neglect, and all that. They use it in their campaigns to raise money here for aid in Africa, okay? But that is seen as a sign of poverty. But I don't know when this is going to be posted, but last week, 45,000 people walked for 4 days, 50 kilometers a day, paid money to walk. What you guys are doing for free, paid money to walk 50 kilometers a day. You see, the thing is, everything we do in Africa, we do it for free. We get it for free. And until other people learn to monetize it, until then, they will always look down at it like it's primitive, it's poor, whatever. You need to value what you have because you are the value. The same thing goes for the mud houses. Now, all over Europe and America now, some people are discovering the houses of the future. It's the same mud houses that we have been living in, at least some people have been living in for centuries. But because of climate change, the walls in Europe and America are crumbling. There is not natural coolness and all the things that a mud house will bring. Now they've suddenly discovered them and labeled it, rebranded it as the houses of the future. You have all of this. All of these things come from you. So we have to learn to appreciate what we have.
The only thing I want to maybe say to people is that if you have money, invest it in Africa because Africa is the future. And also, no one dances better than an African.
On that very melodious note, I would like to round this up and thank both of our guests. Sara from Italy, Myrthe from the Netherlands. My name is Femi Shuewo. You've been listening to the African Narrative Podcast today with two special guests. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please, this is the right time to do so. We are trying to spread the African narrative, the African story, and give pride back to the Africans. I'm a king, yes, I'm a king. I'm a king.